Hey guys, I'm Chirag and welcome to part 9 of the tutorial series on Python Basics tutorial. In this tutorial, we are going to cover the list in Python. So what exactly is the list? So basically the list is the data structure in Python and it can hold values of different data type, and we can certainly change or update the items within the list. Hence we can call it as mutable. And apart from that, we can store duplicate elements within the list, and it's an ordered sequence of elements. So let's go ahead and have an example. So let's define a list. So I will say list1 as a variable equal to, so we can define a list using square brackets. So we will say some values within that list. So I will say 3, 4, 6, 6, 5, or some random value, right? So here we have a list and we can go ahead and say print list1. So let's go ahead and run this file. So I will say python3 list underscore p9.py. So here we have the outcome as a list. Now, what if we want to access certain elements within the list, right? So the items within the list is stored by index. So if we say list of 0, then it will print the very first element of the list. So if I go ahead and run this, it says 3 as an outcome, right? So if we want to access the element at certain index, so for example, I want to access the element residing at index 3. And if I go ahead and run this, it will return 5, right? Why 5? So it says 0, 1, 2, and 3, right? So at the third index, we have the value as 5. So that's the reason we have an outcome as a 5, which is element. So list of square braces, within that we have a number, and that number represents index of the list, right? So that's how you can print certain element from the list using an index. So in short, we can access the elements or the items within the list by its index. Now we can also pass on the negative index. Now if I say list1 of -1, then it will start from the back. It means the reverse order. So now if I go ahead and run this file, it will print 2 that resides at the very last index, right? Now if I want to access the 7, then I can say list1 of -2. So it will fetch the element from backwards by 2. So that is 7. So let's go ahead and run this. So it says 7, right? So this is how the negative indexing works within Python list. So now suppose we want to fetch certain range or chunk of items or elements from the list, then we can achieve this via slicing. So how slicing works? So we have to specifically define the range of index. So now if I say list1 of 3 to 6, then it will fetch the values from index 3 to 6. So let's go ahead and run this. So it says 5, 34, 6. Now if we go ahead to the index 3, that is 0, 1, 2, and 3, that is 5, right? So here we have the first element as 5, followed by 34 that resides on 4th index, right? And then finally we have 6 that resides on 5th index, right? So that's 3, 4, and 5, right? So this is how slicing works. You can change the sequence as per your requirements. So I can also say 2 to 4, for example. And if I run this, then we have outcome as 6 and 5, right? So you can count the index from 0 and you can cross verify that what is the outcome, whether it is correct or not, right? Just for your understanding. So now moving along. Now what if we want to return the index of certain elements? So let me comment this. Now for example, I want to know the index of this element, that is 7. So to get the index of the specific element, there is a method called index. So the syntax is something like list1 or the list name dot index, and here we have to pass on the element of which we want to fetch the index. So I want to fetch the index of the element 7, right? Now if I go ahead and run this, oops, we have to print this. So I will say print, let's run it again. So it's on index 6. So let's check. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and we have the outcome as 6, right? So we can also go ahead and say print list1 of 6, right? So it will print 7. So here we have the index as 6, and here on index 6 we have the element that is 7, right? So well, that's how you can print the index of certain element, right? So now moving along. So now let's say we want to remove certain element from the list. So for example, we want to remove this element that is 7. So for that, what we have to do is we will say list1.remove. So here we have a method that is remove that can work with the list, and we have to pass in the parameter as the element name that we want to remove. So I will say 7, and now if I go ahead and say print list1, then we will not be having the 7th element, right? So let's go ahead and run this. So now as you can see, we have the full list except 7, right? But what will happen in case we have duplicates? So for example, we have 6 as a duplicate. So will it remove both the 6 element, or will it remove the first occurrence or the second occurrence? So let's have a look. So now let's go ahead and try to remove 6 instead of 7, and let's run this. So here as you can see, the first occurrence has been removed and the second occurrence stays as it is, right? So basically dot remove will remove only the first instance of the value if there are duplicates within the list, right? So keep that thing in mind. So now moving along. Now for example, we want to count certain element. So for example, we want to know how many times 6 has been repeated within the list. So for that we have another method that is count. So we can say x.count, and we will pass on the element that we want to count, that is 6 in my case. So now let's go ahead and run this. So in this case it should return 2 as an outcome. Oops, so we have to place this here, and let's run this again, right? So here we have an outcome as 2 because we have 6 2 times within the list, right? So that's how you can count certain elements within the list, right? So then if we want to sort the list, right? So here we have 3 4 6 5 then 34. Now I want it in ascending order. So how we can do that? So we have another method that is sort. So let's say list1 dot sort. Now this will sort the list in an ascending order. So let's go ahead and run this. So as you can see, now we have the list in proper form, the sorted form, right? That is 2 3 4 5 6 6 7 and 34, right? So that's how you can sort the list in an ascending order. So now for example, we want to sort this list in descending order, right? So now here we can use list1 dot reverse, right? So this will sort the list within descending order. So here we have ascending order, and now if I go ahead and run this, it will be in descending order, that is starting from the biggest element, that is 34, right? So that's how sort and reverse will work. Now let's go ahead and add an element within that list. So how we can add an element within this list? So we have a method that is dot append, right? So if I want to add 77 at the end of the list, then I can say list1 dot append, that is 77. And now if I go ahead and say print list1, and if I run this, then we should have an element at the end of the list that is 77, right? So by default, dot append method will add an element or append the element within the list at the end of the list, right? Now, for example, we want to add this element at certain index, or we want to add this element from start, right? So before 3 there should be 77. So how we can do that? So here we can use indexing. So we can mention an index that add this element at the given index. So for that we will be using dot insert method. So let me comment this, and here I will say list1 dot insert. The insert function will take two parameters. So the first parameter will be an index, the place where we want to insert that element. So for example, I want to insert that element at index 0. What I want to insert, that is the element. So in my case it's 77. In your case it can be anything, right? So let me run this again. So now as you can see, we have 77 at the very first, that is on index 0, right? And similarly, you can change this index to 3 or 7 if you want somewhere in between the list, right? So that's how the insert will work, right? So that's insert and append basically. Now we have another method, that is dot clear. So that will basically clear the list. So if I say list1 dot clear, and if I say print list1, and if I go ahead and run this, then it will return an empty list. So it will clear the list. So that's the purpose of the clear method within this list. Along. Now let's try to concate two lists. So let me comment this. Let's define two lists here. So I will say vegetables equal to tomato, right? So we can define a list using square braces, right? So that's where we have the square braces, and we can define the element separated by comma within the list, right? In case you are defining the string, then you have to put that string within single quote or double quote, right? So here we have tomato as an element or an item within the list. Then we have another element, that is brinjal. The third element I will say onion. And we will go with one more, that is potato. And again we will define another list, that is cars, for example, or maybe we will say fruits, right? So I will say mango, comma, apple, right? And I think that's it. Now if I want to concate this two list into one, then the very simple way I can use is that the concatenation operator, that is plus sign. So if I go ahead and say vegetables plus fruits, then let's see what we have here. So as you can see, both the list has been combined, right? So here we have tomato, brinjal, onion, potato, followed by mango and apple, right? So that's how you can concate two list. But we have another method, that is dot extend, to concate the list. So what it will do is, let's see. If I say vegetables, so I want to add this elements, that is the elements of the fruits in the vegetables list, right? So I will say vegetables dot extend with what I want to extend, that is the fruits, right? So fruits is an iterable, or it's a list, right, with which I want to extend the vegetables list. Now if I go ahead and say print vegetables, then it will return tomato, brinjal, onion, potato, mango and apple, right? So now this mango and apple has been appended or added within the vegetables list. Now if you want to add the elements within the vegetables to the fruits list, then you can simply replace this vegetables with fruits and fruits with vegetables, right? Now let's also print vegetables, and we will also say fruits. So let's run this. Now the vegetables remain as it is, right? That is tomato, brinjal, onion and potato. But if you look at the fruits, then we have all the elements within vegetables within the fruits list, right? So that's how extend will work. So basically this will add the iterable or the fruits list or the vegetables list at the end of the first list, right? So here fruits is our first list and it will add the elements of the second list at the end of the first list, right? So that's how extend works. So that's pretty much I wanted to cover in terms of list in Python. There are other things that we will certainly look at later point of time, right? So well, that's it for now, and as usual, if you want me to do tutorial on any use case or service, then please leave them below and I will try my best to come up with the tutorial as soon as possible. And if you have any queries or comments, then again please leave them below and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel.